Hey everybody, I guess I'm live. Thanks for joining me. Happy Meat Shower Day. It is the 147th anniversary of the Kentucky Meatshower. Now, a couple points of housekeeping. I am running my own technology. This is a one-man show. And I am also going to be putting this on Instagram Live. So if you're watching on Instagram, hello. And to you in YouTube land, thank you for joining us and happy Meat Shower Day. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat, but I'm going to focus on the book. First and foremost, I promised some big news, and we actually launched today our Kickstarter for a new book. So the Underwear Chronicles was originally written as a book, and it didn't look like it was going to be a book, so I put it out. I have been putting it out serially in between episodes of The Past and the Curious, and it is actually going to be a book after all. I'm super excited about that. It's really great. So the Kickstarter just launched today at 10 a.m. If you're interested in supporting that, you can find it at thepastandthecurious.com, and it's right at the top. The book is called I See Lincoln's Underpants. I should have led with that, right? So it's not called The Underwear Chronicles. The book is called I See Lincoln's Underpants. I see London, I see France, I see Lincoln. You get it. So I'm super excited. And hey, Braden, nice to see you. Also, if Benson and Keelan happen to be watching, happy birthday to you. Okay, so I'll tell you more about the book at the end. Right now, it is March 3rd, and it is the anniversary of the Kentucky Meatshower. And I want to share this book with you that I wrote it was published in 2019. It was illustrated by my good friend, Shay Goodlett, who is an incredible illustrator. And we got to really collaborate on it and work really, really closely together, which was a treat. Like, it was really a pleasure. So, the general idea, if you don't know about the book, it was a real event. It happened in 1876. In fact, these are newspaper articles from that time, from 1876, from March. This first one is actually from the New York Times. I think it's March 9th is when it actually published. So they sent a reporter down to Bath County, Kentucky. Let me just read you a little bit of it because I think it's really, really funny. Last Friday, a shower of meat fell near the house of Alan Crouch, who lives some 2 or 3 miles from Olympia Springs in the southern portion of the county, covering a strip of ground of about 100 yards in length and 50 wide. So that's basically a football field, right? A football field's worth of meat just mysteriously fell from the sky, March 3rd, 1876. Mrs. Crouch was out in the yard at the time, engaged in making some soap, when what looked like beef began to fall around her. The sky was perfectly clear at the time, and she said it fell in large snowflakes, the pieces in general not being much larger. But one piece fell around her, which was 3 or 4 inches square. It goes on, and it's really hilarious. Here's another one from the New York Herald from the same time, and it's called "The Carnal Rain" is the name of that's the title of the newspaper article. And it goes into real detail. It's a fantastic read. So that was the inspiration for the book. This was a real life event that happened, and many of the characters in that newspaper article that I just read to you, the Crouches, particularly Mr. and Mrs. Crouch, are in the book, but we wanted to make the narrator someone unusual and someone special. Hey, there's Benson. Happy birthday, Benson. We wanted to make something special. So we actually, if you go to Transylvania University, which is the oldest university in the state of Kentucky, it's in Lexington, Kentucky, they have one surviving piece of meat from the Kentucky Meatshower, and it has been in a jar for now, I guess, 100. We decided that we wanted to make that chunk of meat the narrator, because I had never seen a book narrated by a 146-year-old piece of meat. So we took care of that. And so here we go. Let's read The Meatshower, and then I'll tell you more about the book at the end. Okay. The Meatshower. The mostly true tale of an odd and somewhat edible occurrence, by Mick Sullivan and illustrated by Shay Goodlett. Now, I'm going to read it, and then I'll show you the pictures. It's kind of awkward, and I may stop and talk. It's just a fact. Sometimes strange things happen. And you're most certainly going to think this story is strange. But it's a tale as true as the leaves on the trees. Why, it's as real as this very jar on this very shelf. The same one I call home. There's our narrator. There's our chunk of meat. He's looking old. Now maybe you've heard about the famous tsunami of Sticky, the Great Molasses Disaster. As it's known, a storage tank exploded and sent a tidal wave of gooey brown sweetness slowly creeping through the streets of Boston. And this was our take on a very famous woodblock print, which was actually a tidal wave. You may have seen it. It's a very famous Japanese work of art. Or there was the time that a giant flock of birds just plumb fell right out of the sky, with nothing more than a thunder of thuds on the ground. Some folks call that one the Louisiana blackbird tragedy, but believe it or not, I've heard something similar has happened with frogs, or so I've heard. But if you're really looking for something strange, I'll tell you. There's nothing quite like what happened in the little town of Olympia Springs, Kentucky, one day in March of 1876. And that day was today, March 3rd. Here he is again in the town square, but you wouldn't believe me if I told you. It's the reason I'm here, so I'm going to tell you anyway. Mrs. Crouch, ta-da! Try to cut down on the glare. Mrs. Crouch was gathering supplies to make a batch of soap, and it was a hot, smelly job. So she typically worked in the yard, and the weather seemed perfect for the task. Before she opened the door, she heard a sound from above the roof above her. At first, she thought it was a spring shower, but it didn't sound quite like the rain she knew. It fell at odd times. Not the steady, gentle pity-pat of a shower's first raindrops. It was a heavy, flat sound, a soft thunk against her old tin roof. You can see this is one of my favorite spreads that Shay made. Out the window, she saw nothing unusual. Then she heard a few more thunks. Stepping outside, she looked around to see what could be making such a strange sound. And as she looked up, she felt it. It smacked her face with a sloppy slap and slid slow and slimy down the soft skin of her face. She caught her breath and then broke the silence with a shriek. Her husband, kindly Mr. Crouch, came running from the barn as she screamed, "I got hit in the face with a piece of meat!" As a matter of fact, as someone can be in such a peculiar situation, her dear husband calmly replied with a smile, "I know! There's meat falling all over the place. It's a meat shower." "A meat shower?" she screamed. "There's no such thing as a meat shower. Meat doesn't fall from the sky." Now that's my favorite. That's my kids' favorite line to repeat. I like this picture too of just them scratching their heads. Now, that is mostly true. Meat does not normally fall from the sky. But that day, Mrs. Crouch was wrong. On the 3rd of March in 1876 in the little town of Olympia Springs, meat did fall from the sky. But before long, the neighbors gathered on the Crouch's porch, confused and excited. A few carried umbrellas. Someone was toting a shovel, and another had a rake. Ben was the last to arrive. He's also a real character. He's a real person in the New York Herald article. He wasn't so goofy in real life. He was actually kind of a rugged outdoorsman. And in real life, he ate it and said, "Oh, I've had it. It tastes like bear because I've eaten bear before." So he was very certain that it was bear meat. I don't think it was bear meat. Ben was last to arrive, excited, hungry, and ready to make the best of the shower. Pointing with pride to the pail in his hand, he exclaimed, "Look! It's almost full of meat rain. Guess what's for dinner tonight?" This idea horrified Mrs. Crouch. Ben, I think that's a terrible idea. You shouldn't eat meat that fell out of the sky. You don't even know what it is or where it came from. What if it makes you sick? Please, she begged, empty that pail of meat. Now, she was probably right? But Ben saved a little just in case it was delicious. Now, like all normal showers, this meat shower eventually came to an end. Now, perplexed by the strange chunks scattered about, the people of Olympia Springs set about to solve the mystery. But they would not be alone. The next morning, newspapers from Carolinas to California ran the story. No one had ever heard of such a bizarre happening. It was the talk of the nation, and before long the place was crawling with scientists, meteorologists, and butchers. Everyone was hungry for an explanation to the mysterious meat from the sky. I think there's a great image too. Specimens were packed up and sent to labs all over the country, while in Olympia Springs, people guessed and gossiped and waited for an answer. One scientist said it was horse meat. I guess he thought a horse just up and exploded. Shooting meat all over the place. Can you imagine? Not likely if you ask me, and besides, no one in town reported missing any horses. Another scientist speculated that the meat shower was the product of a kettle of vultures, which is the name for a group of vultures in flight. In this hypothesis, a big group of those birds had just feasted on a giant meal, and then, when they started to fly, one of them realized that he had eaten too much. If he was going to stay in the air, well, he had to get rid of some of that meat. And here's the thing about vultures. If one of them barfs, they all barf. This is my favorite picture in the book. This was basically the first picture that Shay and I put together. Like, talking about this. Like, it's got to have this in the middle. It's pretty gross, isn't it? Yeah. In the end, Mrs. Crouch and the townspeople never heard an explanation that satisfied them. And while the scientific remains and specimens disappeared, and most of the remains were thrown away, or eaten by Ben, the town wondered and waited and watched the skies, hoping another meat shower would leave better evidence. After a while, life went back to normal, and the meat shower remained a point of pride in Olympia Springs, Kentucky. But people everywhere else soon forgot about that strange, unexplainable day. But not me. This is the meat talking. Not me. I can't think of anything else. Of course, today, Mr. and Mrs. Crouch, Hungry Ben, and all of the curious townfolk are a distant memory. But I'm still here. I remember hitting the ground, surrounded by all the others, but I don't have the foggiest memory of what happened before that. All I can do is wonder, as I stew in a dusty old jar on a museum shelf. Once, I was in every newspaper from the Carolinas to California. But the few who even notice me today, I'm little more than a curiosity. They squint their eyes and wrinkle their noses before they move on. Maybe meat will never fall from the sky again. But I still pray someone curious and clever is struck by that distant mystery. Because where there is mystery, there is hope. And as you've already clearly seen, anything can happen. So do me a favor and check the weather for tomorrow, because I wonder if it's going to rain. Well, happy meat shower, everybody. I always get a little teary. I don't know, it's special to me because I wrote it. So, thank you for joining me. I hope you celebrate the meat shower in some fun ways. It's such a cool story to me because science, like, things have been explained. Like, things that were mysterious a long time ago have been explained. And so much of the curiosity and magic and weirdness of the world is easier and easier to understand today. but it's never explained this. No one has a clear explanation for it. So I thank you. I thank Shay for this. I also thank the good folks at Transylvania University, like Kurt Godey, who is the keeper of the meat, who actually made arrangements for me to meet the meat, which was really fun. I got to spend a couple weeks with it when they brought it to the museum in Louisville, where I work. So that was really cool. But I do want to tell you just a little bit more about the book that I am starting the Kickstarter for, and we are publishing. So it is different from this book. It is actually a chapter book. It's about 40,000 words, which sounds like a lot of words. It's a lot of words. I wrote a lot of words for it. We're still in the editing process, but I'm working with my dear, dear friend, Suki Anderson, who's been on the podcast. And she's doing illustrations, and I'm grateful to Heart Ally Books, who I have met. That's who is putting out the book, I See Lincoln's Underpants. They are out in Washington State. It's an indie publisher. I'm really excited to work with Lisa and the gang. And the Kickstarter is open. You can pledge if you like, or you can just share. It will be incredibly helpful to do that. I mean, this is definitely a one-man show, so I really appreciate any sort of support that I can get. But it's if you've been listening to the Underwear Chronicles, it's a lot of stuff from the Underwear Chronicles. So it's 15 chapters. They're 2,200 words. I guarantee you kids and parents are gonna really enjoy reading this. I think teachers will too. Yeah, all the stories have to do with somebody's underwear, but it's really biographies and really cool things. In fact, I don't know if anyone out there has ever read any of these books. They're by Georgia Bragg. She's got like How They Croaked and How They Choked, and it's gonna feel a lot like this. This was actually the inspiration for it. So it's really cool information. It's really great stories, just like you expect on The Past and the Curious. But underwear is gonna factor in somehow. So I'm excited about that. And there's also more stuff in the book. There's Underwear Hall of Fame entries, and there's all sorts of shorts that are very brief, that will be just great trivia and great things for kids. So I think teachers are going to like it as well, and librarians. So support. Thank you so much for joining me. This means the world that you all were here today, and out there on Instagram too. Thank you all very much. Happy Kentucky Meatshower Day. And once again, thank you. And yeah, who was it again? Somebody had a birthday. Benson, happy birthday. Bye, everybody.